Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be reviewing Milet's debut album, Aaages. Before we get started, I want to remind you that this is simply my opinion on the album, and if you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. So Milet just released her debut album early June, and she's an artist that I've been following for a good year now. She has been releasing EPs very often and, with various tie-ins with popular movies, animes. So I feel like it was due at some point that I would have to talk about her music. And I've been wanting to for a while. I hesitated to review her last few EPs, but once this debut album was announced, I thought it would be the perfect occasion to finally get to talk about her music and tell you why I found her music to be really interesting. So she's a Japanese artist under Sony Music Japan, and she actually spent many years in Canada, and it's gonna play out later in my review why I'm talking about this, but basically I discovered her with her tie-in song Wonderland for the Japanese animated movie of the same name, which I saw last year with a friend, and I remember it's a very lovely movie, very beautiful, and the moment her song hit in the movie, I knew once I went home I would have to check her out, see who was singing. Thankfully they say in the credits it was her, and I just checked her out and bought the EP immediately. So Milet has a very peculiar voice that you can recognize fairly easily. And it's a very sweet voice, if I might add. It's kind of low in general, and it's not the type of voice that you hear that much anymore in Japanese pop music. So it feels very refreshing. The album overall has 18 songs, which is a lot and just not the usual amount for a pop album. I mean, I feel like usually the maximum we can get is 14 songs for pop artists nowadays, which, there are exceptions, and this one proves it. And what they did quite cleverly here is that they picked 2 songs of 5 EPs released throughout a year, which leaves space for 8 new songs. And I really appreciate the fact that they do deliver on the new material, because the easy way would have been to be like, oh, here's 2 new songs to interest the fans, and just the rest be the songs that were released on EPs before, but they didn't here, and I think it's great. So yeah, 18 songs, it does make for a pretty long album. It goes almost 1 hour and 15 minutes, and I won't lie, it took me a couple of listens and just needed time to really focus on it, because 1 hour 15 is long. And I'm not gonna talk about any songs in specific here, because overall the music style of Milet is pretty much the same recipe over and over, for the exception of Wonderland, because I believe with the tie-in that it adds, this song bears a more fairy tale and epic style, which is pretty much the only song that does that on this album, as the rest, like I said, kind of follows the same path, sometimes the same structures, the same feelings and emotions. And I think this is maybe the one thing that maybe people won't be that much into it, because yes, it does feel very repetitive at times, especially when you have an album that long. But I have to be honest, it doesn't bother me that much. And I don't know why, every time I listen to her songs or the album recently, I just find it so fascinating. There's just something about her music that is so appealing. It's hard not to listen to her, and that is why I'm talking about her, basically. So what I like about Milet, basically, is that she has a very non-standard music style, because her work mixes modern Western pop and Eastern pop together. And I think that's why it works so well, because it's like she found the perfect balance between both styles. Like, it's never too much your typical J-pop music, and it's never quite the usual pop music around the world, but it works so well. And I think that's why she got very popular, because you don't hear that much in nowadays J-pop music scene. And no one really does what she does right now, and I think that's why this album got very popular and ended up being #1 for its first week. She also sings both in Japanese and English very often, and that's why I said, she spent a few years in Canada, and you can tell because her English is really good. And it's really like sometimes it's even just English in the song, and sometimes it's a bit more Japanese, but it's always the same balance between both music worlds, even in this way. And I find that very interesting. I feel like nowadays in Japan, when it comes to pop music, we get a lot more English, like a lot more. And the fact that this album is popular, is working, shows that maybe, new generations are getting more into English, or they might just not mind, honestly. I mean, Nami Amuro has done it for the last few years of her career, and she was still incredibly successful no matter what. So I just think it's nice when you are not Japanese like I am, and hear a little bit of English here and there, and feel it like it blends together so beautifully. So when it comes to the EP songs, they're still pretty good. It's been a year since I've listened to all of them. I still enjoy them quite a lot. It's fun, and like I said, very appealing, very addictive at times. They're very easy to remember, and they're different enough from each other that you can be hooked on them very easily and memorable. And I think with her voice as well, it really adds a lot. So yeah, like I said, my biggest nitpick is that the album is long, so it tends to drag a bit. I feel like some songs, they're so similar, you can just change it in a track list. It wouldn't make much of a change. And still, I just can't say that the album is boring, because that would not be true, because it is really far from boring. I just find this album to be fun. Like, it's enjoyable, you can just listen to it, really focus on it, or just in the background while you're working on something. The lyrics are very easy to remember. I found myself humming some songs while I was working without even listening to music, because it's just that good. So, like I said, we get 8 new songs on this album, and they do add a lot. They don't feel like fillers, which is, the best thing you can ask for. Even a song like Dome is very different, very intense and dramatic, but not in the way other songs are on the album. So this one really stood out to me, because it was like, oh, this is very, very different, and still works, and it flows really well with the rest of the album. And honestly, I don't have much to add, many details. I think they work really great. They do fit these songs with the album just as well as, if they would have been released on EPs as well, I would not be able to tell the difference, if I have to be honest, because the quality is pretty much the same thing here, which is very good. So yeah, this is a very long review, but it's I've been waiting to talk about Milet's music for a while, and that was the opportunity, and there's so much to say, and I hope I conveyed my feelings and my impressions well enough for you to actually want to check her out, because I think you should. And she has some very catchy tunes. Every time her new EP was announced, I was like, yes, I'm ready to buy it. And when this album was announced, so actually it was supposed to come out in May, but COVID-19 happened, so it was pushed 2 weeks later, which is fine. And I think what I like the most about her is that she fits into this new trend of solo artists who manage to break through the mainstream market with their own musical identities, like Vicky Blanca is one of the example I can think of. I would say to some extent Wednesday Campanella did that as well. even though it's very different music styles. I think like Vicky Blanca is the closest to Milet when it comes to the fact that they both work and compose their music and really have this very appealing style that just you don't hear anywhere else and you don't have anyone else doing it. So yeah, I think you should definitely check out this album because it's a very competent album. It knows what it's doing. The production is great. The melodies are very impactful. And I gave it 4 stars. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to be alerted of new videos on the channel. I'm trying to get more out, so you know, I always appreciate some likes, some feedback. If you've never heard of Milet or if you've heard of her and we're waiting to see a review, please let me know in the comment what you think about this album. Thank you for watching again, and I'll see you next time.